I'm joined today by Scott Mastic, Director for IRI's Middle East and North Africa programs, and one of the leaders of IRI's team in Jordan to observe the November 9th parliamentary elections. Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Can you begin by telling us a little bit about what these elections mean for Jordanians?
Sure. I think if you look at this election, you have to look at a large context under which they're being conducted. This election comes on the heels of the king's dissolution of the government and parliament about a year ago at this time, so it wasn't an election that was expected until about last year at about this time. It also is an election being undertaken under a new electoral law, so it's an election that comes with a broader package of reforms that the kingdom is undertaking to try and continue down the course of democratic expansion and participation. I think for Jordanians, what this election will be about will be telling in several ways. First is simply whether they think this package of reforms in the new electoral law will actually be a step in the direction of greater democratic participation. And then, of course, what ultimately is the product of the election in the new parliament and how it exercises its powers. So I would look for, first of all, participation and voter turnout as a sign for what this means. Then ultimately how the new law is perceived after the fact, and whether it's considered to be a step down the course of democratic expansion in the kingdom, and then ultimately what power the new parliament wields in accordance with its mandate.
IRI has a number of staff and Middle East experts in the country to observe the election. Can you talk a little bit about the role that they're going to play on Election Day?
Sure. Significant in this election process is that Jordan is allowing international observers for the first time. We, IRI, will field a delegation of 24 observers. NDI also has a delegation it's fielding. In addition to that, there's going to be more than 3,000 domestic monitors in the country. Our team will be looking to see that the process unfolds consistent with the laws and administrative rules that are set out to ensure a free and fair election process. We'll closely be watching democratic participation and voter interest in participation in this process, and then ultimately looking at things like whether election workers are well trained and know what to do, whether domestic observer groups are present, whether candidate agents are present and know what to do, and then of course monitoring the vote count as well.
You sort of outlined a few of the things, specific things that your monitors or your observers are going to do at the polls. Can you talk to me specifically sort of how their day will work? What will they be there at the opening of the polls? And what kind of specific things will they be looking at each polling station they visit?
Sure. Whenever we undertake international election observation, we try to capture as complete a picture of the election process as possible. And that process doesn't happen only on election day. There is a process leading up to election day, and then voting, and then of course the counting and outcome that ultimately is something that voters and the population must see as being credible. So what we will do, we've had already long-term observers monitoring the process here for about the last month. On the morning of the election, we will have our teams placed at voting places before the opening of polls so that they're able to watch the process of opening. They will watch initial voting in those places. Then what we will do is have them sort of according to random sampling go around in the districts where they're deployed and see different polling places throughout the course of the day. They then will, at the end of the voting, close a polling place and watch the count occur to capture that complete picture.
Great, thank you. Scott, thanks so much for joining us today and for sharing your expertise.
Thank you.